Welcome everyone to our podcast sharing insights and experiences for game studies and engineering students here at the University of Klagenfurt. As you know, GSE blends game analysis with technical skills, and that often involves being creative and having great ideas. While we often think of how to implement something, today we're actually taking a step back and take a look at how to create and modify ideas. This is particularly relevant for students currently enrolled in our Modeling Sustainability in Board Games course. But of course, the core principles apply to anyone interested in innovation. I'm certainly no expert in this area, but I think together with my colleague, Professor Wilfried Elmenreich, we'll approach the topic and try out a few things. Wilfried, thank you very much for joining us. Could you start by briefly introducing yourself, maybe your background, your connection to games, and how you stand with your creative technologies?
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Wilfried Elmenreich, and I'm a computer scientist. I'm working as a researcher and professor in the area of intelligent energy systems, and I'm also teaching in engineering subjects as well as in game studies and engineering. And I'm also no specific expert for creative techniques, but all those things I'm doing and where I'm working at require creativity, and therefore I would say I'm a user of creative techniques and designs because it is important to come up with new ideas, regardless what you're doing. I think regardless of your specific branch, if you are making games or if you're doing something else, it's really important that you can foster your creative side in order to come up with innovative solutions.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I'm Mathias, the host. And today it's a little bit reversed because I will do much of the talking and Wilfried will ask the stupid questions, which is typically my part. And I actually will try it out. That's the whole thing. So Crazy 8 is a technique where you work alone, basically. So we can try that, each on our side. And you only need a piece of paper, preferably something like DIN A4 or US letter. So that would be a good size. What you actually do first is you fold your paper once so that you half it basically, then you fold it a second time, again halving the size, and then a third time. When you then unfold your paper, you should have 8 rectangles of the same size. So then you already have your creative template, and the idea would be that you get problem statement. In our case, the problem statement board game sustainability is to create a game. We'll basically do the same. And we need a great idea for that game so that it's not like ropes and ladders and Monopoly or activity. So we need a better idea than that. And just to come up with an idea, we can use the Crazy 8 method. We'll have 8 minutes to fill 8 ideas in these small rectangles. So you can draw something, you can write a few keywords or whatever you prefer. But at the end of the 8 minutes, we actually should have 8 ideas of us each. Will actually move fast forward with the podcast, and then we'll tell each other the ideas. Should we do it first and then explain what the benefit of the method is?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. So, of course, we discussed the topics in advance because it's really hard to get creative on the show. So what we thought about is we could make a game, a video game that deals with sustainability, sustainable behavior, and the motivation for it. Okay. Does that summarize your idea? Because it was not my idea. If you're okay with that?
It's the first idea for finding ideas, yes.
Great. Okay, then let's start. Crazy 8. And we're back. We actually finished early. That's
really
how the creative people work. 1 minute and 20 were left.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's actually really nice. I thought I will basically stop now after the third idea, but then it went on. So how do we do it? Do we want to go for one? Then I go for one?
Let me hide the other ideas.
Are you painted?
Of course.
Okay, because I wrote something.
So this
we have to describe it. It looks like 2 pawns, one with a car and one connected with a bike, and a few dots, which seemed like positions for the pawns.
Exactly, yes. So basically, you are at kind of a race, or you're trying to reach some goal. And the thing is that you can use different means of transportation, but of course they have different effect on the environment. So there should be some penalty for using the car or something, but typically the car would be faster than the bike. So it would be of course, the balancing is still yet to be done, but that is basically the game idea.
Nice. I just realized that my ideas were very superficial compared to yours. Okay,
You haven't seen my others.
Okay, my idea would be the drill sergeant. So I always give it a title. The drill sergeant. If you don't behave, you'll hear the whistle. That was the subplot line. And the idea would be that there's a game that fosters behavior, something like mobility or something like littering or wasteful working with resources being wasteful. And then the others would decide if you behave or not. And if you don't behave, the drill sergeant will, blow the whistle really loud, or you have to do 10 push-ups or something like that.
Okay, that's great.
It's a very social game.
For me, the crazy eight is like using the first slots just to take the ideas that are not that creative, because there are things that you already know, or stuff like this, but it doesn't work for you because you come up with a very innovative idea already in the first place.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's what the first thing. What would I do if people do not behave sustainable? Just put out the whistle and.
Yeah, because for example, my second idea is like just Monopoly with special cards that are related to sustainability and probably with some CO2 emissions calculation in addition to just trying to get most of the money.
Okay. Yeah,
so,
but
nothing more than that. Not very innovative, but it's just the idea that I had to get out of my mind in order to think of other ideas. So I wrote it down, and then with this,
that's actually the beauty of Crazy 8, because you get away those obvious ideas. The first few slots are reserved for the obvious ideas. My mind works a little bit different. So drill sergeant was kind of obvious to me, but now an obvious one comes. Scarce resources, managed resources to have wealth or chill. So something beneficial, like, if you walk, you have something to eat. If you drive the car, you'll go to bed hungry, something like that. And the game would reflect on that. So it would also be kind of a social component, because of course in the game you cannot have a penalty for people, but like that at least, but you can say something like, you go to bed hungry. And then maybe this is a conversational game that motivates people.
Nice.
But the scarce resources is pretty obvious to me. Next up, idea number 3.
So again, something with a bicycle. So this time it is a real life bike tour. So basically you're not limited by any virtual resources, but it is just that you are in your team with bicycles and you are playing basically in the real surroundings. So this should be some kind of map of a city or something. So it should be played in a place where there are nice places to go by bicycle. And basically the points you earn would be connected to the area you cover. But it should be less of a sports event, but rather being your motivation. So how far do you want to go before you just go for the first beer or so?
Okay.
So it's up to your group. So it should be a game. It should be fun. The question is, what do you do? Do you go for ice cream already, or do you continue going by bike somewhere else?
That is a really good idea. Maybe with groups and different routes, and then you can basically compete who wants to step out first and the other not, or something like that. Then mixing up the groups so that there are less bikers in there, or the hardcore bikers or something. That's awesome. I like that a lot.
Balancing won't be easy, but that's the idea.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean, you could add something like taking selfies somewhere and sending it to the other group.
Yep.
And then maybe having the component of faking the selfies or something like that. That would be really awesome. That would be really cool. So now people call me. Nobody calls me typically, but in the midst of a podcast, people call me. I don't know. Okay, my idea is pretty bad compared to yours, but I like the simplicity of it. I call it the receiving end. So speaking of selfies, you're at a nice place. There's a sunset and you actually want to take a photo. but people keep throwing empty bottles and stuff into the picture frame, and you have to get it out to take a photo, and you have to be fast because the next one is already coming.
That's nice, yeah. So this would be rather computer game than board game, I guess. Or you could also do it as a board
You
game.
could do it as board game
Yes.
too, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. So defining a picture frame, and then people have the litter stuff. Maybe they can get it from somewhere, like from the outside. And then it would have the additional component to touch it, what the other bring, like a handkerchief or something like that.
The question is, would it be a competitive game? And if yes, then probably there is a motivation for me to litter when you try to take the photo.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, we have to think about that mechanic. But maybe you have to maybe that's an unwanted role, like a shameful role, like the troll or something like that. And it's combined with a hat or something like that.
So you see, the idea is very deep.
It's not as shallow as I thought it was. Okay, number 4.
Okay, so since I was outside with my last idea, so this idea I'm also outside, but I'm coming back to the board game table. And the idea is just that you have to gather resources for your game outside. So you have to go out in the forest and, for example, find some seeds or flowers that you then can use on the board game, which is not further defined because I had no time to think about how this board game then could work. But the idea is to gather something from outside the door.
That's awesome. There's actually a very small game. I did play it. I have it on my list from itch.io. It's called The Perfect Rock, where you have to find a place to live with your people. So you go to a foreign world and have to find the perfect rock to settle on. And there you actually have to go outside and find stones to play with. But that's awesome. Yeah. You have to build your game with a set of rules in advance. Awesome. I have a knack for social games. So again, I have a kind of a role-playing social game. So it would have to be played at least with 2 people. And one person needs to persuade the other to be more sustainable, but the other one is a little kid.
So the kid would be less predictable?
No, you have to play a little kid. That would be the fun part. You
Okay.
have to play a 3-year-old or something like that. And the other person has to talk the 3-year-old into it. And maybe you need a third person as a judge so that it goes in a round. Like that's not really, or that's out of character behavior or something like that. Or maybe there is a list of like bullshit bingo words that the kids cannot use or have to use, something like that. An additional constraint dimension.
It would be a very challenging game for me.
You can be the judge.
I would love to play it. Even as the judge would be difficult.
Okay.
But I would love to play it. So
it's very open-ended, I think. Okay, number 5.
So my ideas always kind of circle around either materials or outside, or in this case, you have your materials as raw materials and you should make your game or your own rules. So basically part of the game is given, but part of the game is not given, and it is part of the gameplay to find out what to do with it. And here I just have shown that there is probably already a board or some wood pieces that you can use.
Now that you say that, I have the greatest idea ever, which aligns with yours, I think. It would be called the ultimate extrinsic motivation, where you actually have to make the rules for sustainability and you set up the world with your own pieces, like the wood doesn't behave or the seeds do not behave, or something like that. And then you have to challenge the rule sets. One or more people would play the receiving end and the others would play the legislative. Maybe some people would be the executive. That would be nice. Awesome. My idea is not as good. It's balancing mental health, wastefulness, laziness with sustainability. So you can actually have something like a scale and then gather points for being sustainable or being lazy. But being lazy then adds to your relax factor or mental wellness factor. Maybe not mental health, but wellness factor.
I can totally relate to that. So especially for the lazy part.
Yeah. Actually, that was something that I had from the first segment on. It was the innere Schweinehund game from Tom.
This is actually a big problem in sustainable behavior. So we all know what would be good and good behavior for sustainability for nature, and then we don't do it because it's just easier not to do it or to do something else.
Yeah, maybe a component where you individually can be well, but the next person playing it would then lose something. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to get well and say, no, I'm lazy. And then the next person would have to invest more to get well, actually, because the environment is hostile or something like that.
And basically, this is kind of a prisoner's dilemma then. If then eventually it comes back to you, and probably if everybody's lazy, it's really bad for all of you.
Yes.
But cooperation or behaving a little bit less lazy, more sustainable, would pay off more if everybody would do it. So that
is
nice.
Excellent. And it actually maps to the prisoner's dilemma, so we can balance it really easy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbalanceable, but we know it at least. That's enough for researchers. Awesome. Number 6. It was number 6, yes? And
Yeah.
It's your turn.
So this is a very bad idea because it really has problems with privacy. But basically, it would be having QR codes on vehicles, and basically you would discover these vehicles and find out how much they traveled and how much CO2 emissions they caused.
Oh, I like that idea. There actually has been somebody who had a stream on Flickr, a photo stream on Flickr. So that was a photo platform. And they would take photos of cars that parked wrong, publicly shaming them. So this would be the same mechanic, more or less. Very nice. Yeah, I agree that it might be challenging for the GDPR. It's a great idea. We can work with that. Okay, now I think my worst idea, that was a downer, a quiz where you actually have cards with motivation on it. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? So really stating the motivation, because I want to, and people have to classify if it's an intrinsic or an extrinsic motivation. It's not fun at all.
But challenging, because you have to explain things, and the question is how do you assign points? Because usually it's then voting of the others, which can destroy families, you know.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's a play once game like we had last year in the board game jam, where they had the cards and it was mostly talking about the cards and why are they there. So that would be basically the same thing. So very educational and virtually no replayability value.
Yeah, definitely has the effect of making people thinking about sustainability in a different way that they usually would. So
yeah, and maybe it can be meshed up with another mechanic, and people can write the cards on their own, like creating a motivation card. No, well, let's stop with that. I think that's my best idea is the last one.
oh, okay.
So you're up, number 7.
Yeah, so this is basically, I always wanted to make a deck building card game eventually. So idea number 7 is just making a deck building card game. And the card categories would be activities or life paths that you can choose in order to support sustainability. And for example, going vegan, going into activism, going into informing things. The idea would be that you cannot do everything, but you have to kind of focus on one thing and then to build your cards in that area so that you really have a strong set in order to overcome the partner you play with. So it would be then a competitive game like any deck building card games where you have battles. So not that innovative, but it's just the kind of game I would love to make.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be really awesome. I can see the point. At your first sentence, I thought I would call it Magic the Littering, but
Yeah.
It's more than that. It's more than that. Definitely. Awesome. I like that idea, but it's a lot of work to create the cards because you have to have a lot of cards to actually allow for deck building. Or maybe it's just 5 cards per deck or something like that. That would be one thing. And then just drawing them might be an option.
And also coming up with the proper values, the balancing and stuff, that would be a lot of work. But for making an initial game, you can just build it upon some blank cards.
Yeah.
But just draw the basic.
Yeah, but also the
things on it.
ideas. So it would be a rock, paper, scissors system where activism beats littering or something like that. So you have to think about that you don't overpower one side over the other. That was always a problem with Magic the Gathering. There were sets that were unbeatable.
Definitely, yeah. We will sell the cards. That's the
Yeah,
trick.
booster packs. It's also a business model in sustainable packaging, of course. That's awesome. Okay, my next one would be Fake It or Make It. It's a multiplayer social game where you have to trick others into them believing that you're actually working sustainable. I have no idea how that would work. Maybe you have a certain problem and you then find a solution and you're constrained by a lot of things, like maybe words or cards or something like that. And then you have to present a solution and the others have to vote if that is sustainable or not. But you can then build alliances, like if you call mine sustainable, I call yours sustainable too, something like.
Okay, and there would be also a motivation or some mechanic that would reward you if you have something that is not actually sustainable, but the others believe it. So you can trick them, right?
Yeah, that is something we have to think about. But maybe there are cards, like there is an innovation card where on the back end there is a great innovation, and on the other side it says like you're selling the iPod as the newest innovation, but everybody knew it since 15 years. It doesn't solve a thing, and then you can play that card, but they only see the backside, and they have to believe you or not. Something like that, maybe. So there has to be some faking mechanism or poker mechanism in there. And I'm not sure, but it sounded for me like a good seventh idea.
Definitely, yeah.
Maybe it's nothing.
So many great ideas, and we should actually go for that one. Or
Yeah,
for,
that's
for
the
one of those.
downside. For today, we cannot create a game. We just create ideas.
Okay, speaking of ideas, my last idea again is basically driven by mechanics. So besides making a deck building card game, I would be also tempted to make a game that basically implements a simulation, for example, of a company or of an enterprise. And so the game is called Manager because you're managing this enterprise. And your goal is on the one side to make the company prospering, to get money, and on the other side you also want to get the certification for the sustainability behavior of the company. And this is, for example, the European certificate for this would be EMAS. So it would be this EMAS certificate that you would try to get while managing your company. But I'm mostly interested in just coming up with a nice system of interconnected things that you have to manage and that would interplay. So basically writing a computer simulation in form of a board game. That would tempt me.
Nice. And then you can actually open new markets, like you have the MS certification, then you can go biological or sustainable resources, then you can have CO2 neutral, and just go through all those certificates one after the other.
Yeah, so probably a certificate
Like
would
a
be already
skill
very
tree.
sophisticated.
Yeah, see, that's the great part. If you bring up the initial idea, then I can top up. But there's another method for that. We'll come to that. Okay, my last idea, that's most likely the worst idea when you hear it, but I like it a lot. So because I like Cards Against Humanities. So yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So I'm on the right page here. So what I would do is like a checkbox party game. I would let people write greeting cards. But you would write half of the greeting card and I would write half of the greeting card with the goal that there is something on there that motivates people to be more sustainable. And then we mesh up our greeting cards.
Then we have greeting cards.
Yeah.
As a side product of the game, it's also producing great output.
That's true, yeah. And then we can think of text, holes in the text. If we have the greeting cards, we can think of holes in the text, and then we can actually go for Cards Against Humanity. So something like that would be really awesome. And always with these, I really like those sayings on the greeting cards. If the sun goes up in the morning, it will go down in the evening, or something like that. So completely senseless horoscope-like thingies. That'd be a lot of fun to make, actually. If you don't throw away your can, it will not lie there, or something like that.
And also a bit more spicy things like in Cards Against Humanity. And I'm totally in.
We have to spice it up. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. We have to think in what dimensions, but that would be really cool, I think. Yeah, but it's also very raw. The idea is very raw. Okay, that's it. What do you think, Wilfried? How do you like Crazy 8?
It's awesome. So, of course, the ideas were raw, but just consider we had 1 minute per idea, less than 1 minute because we finished early. So it was so quick. And the nice thing is that since it is 8 ideas, usually I don't have 8 bad ideas. I probably have 6 or 7, but that means there need to be 1 or 2 not so bad ideas in this resulting 8.
Yeah, but that's actually really, that's the main thing with it. So if we do it, the 2 of us, then we have 16 ideas, and there's a high probability that we will find an idea that we both think is great. So that's the great part about it. So for the downsides of Crazy 8, it's a little bit stressful. I mean, if you don't bring up 8 ideas in 8 minutes, we can obviously bring up 8 ideas in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So obviously, we don't have a problem with that, but we tested it in a lecture, and some people really did not like the idea of just drafting the last 3 ideas in 3 seconds. So they were perfectionists, which is not good for that. So sometimes it doesn't work. And also very introverted people have problems with communicating the ideas afterwards. So that might be the case that 1 or 2 people do not communicate their bad ideas. They don't want to be open about them. And then, of course, you're losing ideas. That's not good.
Yeah, but given that you are asked to make 8 ideas, it's more likely that you will tell your 8 ideas, or probably your best 5, to the others, rather than if you do an unstructured setting, then introverted people might even contribute less. So
yeah,
I'm not sure if it is really bad for introverted people. It's probably not extra helpful, but I don't think it is. It puts them at a great disadvantage.
Yeah, also it detaches them from talking while idea generating. So that's actually good. So if you don't keep in mind that you have to tell your ideas to the others, you're free to write. That's a good part. Okay. Now I'm a little bit disappointed with ourselves because I have, I think, 10 methods. We already took half an hour, but it was fun. I wouldn't miss it. And yeah. So the next one would be mashup. I think that's faster. So mashup is basically, and I didn't prepare well. I read everything, but I actually wanted to highlight it. Mashups, what they do for you is you have a basic idea, and then you define dimensions of the idea, which are controversial. And then you add items to those dimensions, and then you combine 2 items in a juxtaposition. That means that you say, for instance, like the example we had with sustainability and motivation, there we already have the 2 dimensions, like sustainability and motivation. For sustainability, we would say littering, mobility, and brainstorm a few terms, just what can be discussed in sustainability. And then for motivation, we discuss what can be in motivation. Like, for instance, extrinsic motivation, money can be fame. And then we combine 2 of those words, like, for instance, littering and fame. And then we have to think about how to make a game about littering and fame, and then see if it reconnects to the original topic. So the mashup is intentionally setting controversial topics to each other to think outside the box. That's the whole idea. You want to do that with me?
Sure, yes.
Okay, then we'll just talk about it. So the group should be bigger, but we'll just talk about it to give you an idea. So the topic we decided upon, with the little help of Gamma 3 27 billion parameters, was lost technology and rediscoverability. And that actually gives us already 2 dimensions. So should we add a dimension there? What do you say? Let's stay with the 2. Because then it's easier to relate back. Any ideas about lost technology? What is lost technology?
Everything that the Romans did. Hopefully not everything was lost there, but there's probably a lot of lost.
No, I'll stop here.
There.
I like the term everything that the Romans did. That is awesome. That's definitely something we need to combine with something else. Everything that the Romans did. That's also a title for a game. The Romans did? Okay. I would say something like pottery, which is not as cool as everything that's awesome. And rediscoverability, I would say index cards from the library.
Sounds unrelated enough, yes.
Yeah? Any other idea?
Probably a PhD student that is working on some topic and coming up with some ideas, finding out that they have just rediscovered them instead of discovering them in the first place.
Realization of not innovation.
Yeah.
Okay. Of not innovating.
Like the worst fear of when you're writing your doctoral thesis and doing research, that somebody scooped your
That's
topic.
much better. Worst fear of a PhD student.
If you want to say it in a catchphrase, that would be it, yes.
Worst fear of a PhD student. Of course, it's not funny for PhD students, but we are already over with that, so
Yeah.
we find it funny.
We have been there, and somehow got past that issues.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I would actually suggest that we combine everything that the Romans did with the worst fear of PhD students. How can we make a game that communicates lost technology and rediscoverability?
Should it be still on the topics of lost technology, or should it be those two catchphrases? Because those two catchphrases make up new games.
Yeah, but they should trigger the game idea, and it should then relate back to the overall topic.
Okay.
That's hard.
The game could be that you're a PhD student. You specialized in ancient technology history. Then through an unintentional time warp, time machine use, whatever, you're actually at that time and you really struggle. Because you get questions that you totally fail because you don't know the details.
Yeah, but that's actually good. We can make the PhD student an engineering student that makes a time machine, but it can only go back in time and not back in time. And you have to rediscover everything that the Romans did to get back.
Yeah, what I actually meant was rather the problem that, I don't know, in my lecture, I explain how a generator and a transformer work,
Okay.
and the motor. But if you would put me back in time and even give me the technical possibilities to build stuff, I would totally fail building anything that would work. Because it would be, how does this electricity actually work?
I can relate to that, yeah. If you give me water and copper, I cannot make a generator. Definitely not. But in principle, I know how it works.
Yeah. So we think of a lot of things that we think that we know how they work. Yeah. And then we are absolutely unable to really build them. We haven't understood them enough. And that is not only in engineering, that is basically in every domain, I think. We are kind of specialists in using things. Mm-hmm. We just barely know enough in order to use the things properly, but we don't understand things. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually cool. So that would be a survival game then, more or less.
For example, yeah.
Yeah, so that you know how stuff works, but it's really hard to implement it yourself. So basically, everybody knows how electricity works, but let's light up a house with our knowledge.
Yeah.
And a stick.
And not to speak of computers or mechanical things like locks.
Yeah.
Can you build a lock? True.
How to build a lock, yes. How to actually build a trap, yeah. But that's actually good. That's nice. So we came up with an idea that we relate to lost technology and rediscoverability by setting people in the position that they have to rediscover stuff they actually know. So that's cool. Okay, what do you think of the method?
It's interesting because we had the two topics beforehand. Yeah. So it sounded like it would be very clear where we would end up. Yeah. But actually everything was a surprise for me. So the end product, or even the things that I came up with, I'm a bit surprised that I had these ideas because I didn't think of this before.
Yeah, but actually that totally reflects my thinking about that too, because I didn't think it would work. I thought like, oh my God, let's try something I never tried before. It will not work. And I'm really surprised because now that the idea is out there with the survival game, it's obvious. But I didn't think of it.
Yeah, exactly.
In the first place. That's actually pretty cool. I think it's a method you have to try several times to get more used to it, but that might be really, really helpful. Awesome. So the pros and the cons of it are hidden in my 36 pages report. That's a little bit the downside of it. And I actually wanted to note it here, but let's keep it that way. It helps, but you have to try it. It's nothing you will do at the first time or in fun doing. What is
interesting is I think basically you could also do a mashup with an AI as partner. And I'm not sure if this has been researched or not, but I would somehow guess that probably doing it with humans still gives better results than with the AI. The AI has a vast knowledge of everything, but probably the ideas you get by interacting with the AI are probably more predictable towards the main ideas. So I think this is something which really brings humans to come up with something innovative and overcome basically limitations of
I think you
technical
hit a
things.
strong point there, because AIs are typically very good at predicting something that is relevant because they know it's relevant. What we're searching here is a juxtaposition. So something that is not combined in advance, but makes a new thing out of the combination. And while we did not come up with a unique game idea, because Don't Starve and stuff like that does that already, or Minecraft, it's still the juxtaposition of the whole thing led to a new creative path. So that's actually cool. Okay, then up next would be the method of brain writing. It doesn't mean that you have to stick a pen in your nose and write with your brain. What it actually does, and that's pretty cool, there is the 6-3-5 method, and we cannot try that because 6-3-5 means 6 participants write down 3 ideas in 5 minutes. And then they exchange the paper. So you sit in a circle and you take the paper and give it to the person to your right, which again has 5 minutes to write 3 ideas or extend on your ideas with 3 extensions. And then this goes on 6 times. And that, of course, takes a long time. That would be 5 times 6 times 3, I think, if my combinatorial skills are still alive, but my math skills are not alive. So I can't tell you how much it takes. But it's rounds with 5 minutes each. So it's actually easy, isn't it? It's half an hour. Yeah. And in this half an hour, you get 6 times 3 ideas. So quite a lot of ideas, actually. Yeah.
But we were faster with the Crazy 8.
Absolutely. We were faster with the Crazy 8. But what actually works is that it takes out this communication of the Crazy 8 ideas because you hand over the ideas. So people who are better with writing than talking have more creative input to the whole idea. It works especially well in hierarchical systems. You can also mix and match so that people do not know where the idea comes from, stuff like that. So that might be an option. My report here says that this works with hierarchical structures, which I doubt a little bit, but I think that it combines introverted and extroverted people in a well structured way.
I think in general, it's not easy to break up hierarchical structures. But of course, such an idea, especially since one idea, multiple people then have stakes in it. So that would help that one idea is not attached to a single person anymore.
Yeah,
and has more chance of survival.
That's true. If somebody follows up on your idea, already 2 proponents are attached to this idea. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so that would be brain writing. You have to try yourself. That would take too long. We're already at 45 minutes here with my personal counter, which will be less in the podcast, of course, because we'll cut out the ums. So now I have a practical thing again. The worst possible idea. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah, you know it. It's something I really, really like to try. I didn't try it yet, but it's a collaborative game of finding the worst possible solution to a problem. So we again have a problem. We want to make a game about an artificial ecosystem. And now we really, really want to have the worst possible idea. Let's go. What do not want to have in a game with an artificial ecosystem? I think it would be good, or it would be really bad if everything is handled by squirrels.
Okay, this is amusing. A very bad idea would be if you build your artificial ecosystem by downscaling an existing working one by just killing animals and plants.
I like that. And
So
only the
basically,
squirrels survive.
Reduction to the minimum. And squirrels, yeah, we can keep them.
So there's still place for squirrels. But I like the idea because there is this comic of cause and correlation. And when you kill the wolves, then there are more foxes, and they will then eat whatever, and so on and so on. So creating an artificial ecosystem by simplifying a working one, that's a really bad idea. That will not work. Awesome. And then you score with just less. So the less components you have in your artificial ecosystem, the more you score.
If it is stable.
If it is stable over a certain period of time. Nice.
I think it's not even the worst game one could make.
I think if we turn it around, it's actually really good. You have something like a working, stable, minimal artificial ecosystem, and then you add components.
Yes, but even with reduction,
Jenga.
it's kind of educational because you would understand the necessity of having interacting components in your system.
Yeah, that's a good point. I thought of Jenga immediately now, but in the wrong way. But if you pull out stuff
In Jenga, you reduce and you at the cost of the stability of the tower. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so our worst possible idea came out to be not so bad.
Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yeah, what do you think of the method?
The method is great. Also, I'm still thinking of the Jenga metaphor. This is great.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what is very good for is a conversation starter. If you need one idea that people agree upon, then everybody can add to the worst possible idea. And then somebody actually says, oh, it's not so bad. If you remove that, and maybe we can turn it around. And so it's a good, because you remove the pressure of finding a good idea.
Yeah, and I think it is a good way basically to lead away a bit from the most obvious things that you could do on one topic. Because you intentionally try to do something that is bad, which is probably also a good deal innovative. And therefore, if you can then remove the bad and keep the innovative parts, then you're there.
Yeah, yeah. And as there's no pressure that it actually has to work because everybody's working towards an idea you will not implement anyway, you have no constraints in that sense. That's awesome. Okay. So strength here is that you think outside the box. Sometimes it works out, obviously. It works with us. So we can say sometimes it works out. We're researchers. Downside, I think, is that you only generate one idea. So that's crazy eight. And I think also Mashup and Brainwriting have this opportunity of creating multiple ideas. The worst possible idea is when you have, I think, a very specific question like how to make a Monopoly-like game that presents you with an artificial ecosystem. Then you can work with that.
Yeah, you probably can serialize the methods.
Yeah.
So starting with one that generates many ideas and then focusing on one idea via the worst.
The worst possible implementation of it. Yeah, something like that. And that might be something we can still try at some point. Okay, so the worst possible idea. In similar lines, there's the technique of reverse brainstorming. Have you heard of that?
No.
No, that's
I know
good
brainstorming, but what is reverse brainstorming?
Reverse brainstorming is instead of trying to achieve X, we are trying to achieve the opposite and brainstorm how we achieve the opposite.
Once again, please.
Yeah, so when we want to communicate motivation for sustainability, we actually brainstorm how to make a game to promote motivation for a non-sustainable lifestyle. So it inverts not on the level of finding the worst possible idea, but it inverts at the level of the problem statement.
Got it, yeah.
Should we try it with the motivation for non-sustainable lifestyle?
Okay.
Yeah. I would actually have a game where you can buy everything at Temu or Shine. That would be great. And then you have to just buy stuff really cheap.
In my case, probably I'm again at mobility. And it would be like, I don't know, the problem of finding the laziest method of going to university. Like the problem of selecting between cars.
Okay. Or if you take the airplane today.
Even better.
Yeah.
The helicopter.
Should I take the airplane or the helicopter or my Bentley to the university? I'm not sure. Yeah, that's actually good. Yeah, and then we can actually reverse it with how to get in the most lazy way to the university. We have to find those constraints. Like there's a security check at the airport, so maybe not by train, but the Bentley. I have to fill my gas tank and drive myself. Maybe I'll still take the train because I'm too lazy, and then we can reverse it or not.
So probably yeah, but since the original possibilities all were unsustainable. Okay, you have added the train.
Yeah.
It wasn't in my model, of course, if I add the train, or of course probably the lazy but sustainable version would be probably an e-bike. It's lazy, but the consumption is lowest of.
And maybe even an e-bike to the train, because then they have the train ride where you have to do nothing.
That's true. Train ride is if
There's no security check.
it is on a pass, yeah. And you can really relax there.
Yeah, that might be an option. Yeah, but again, we talked about the method. For the buying game, I would say that you end up with a lot of clothes at the end of the day. And you have to throw them away, and then you have to pay for the garbage.
You have a mess in your apartment, and you have to tidy up.
Something like that. A repercussion for buying so many things. Or you don't get into your flat anymore because the packages are stacking up in front of your door from Amazon or where, something like that. Yeah, it might be an idea to follow. But yeah. I think, again, it's something you can talk about, basically. It's a good starter. But yeah, it's good if you're stuck, I think. If you're in an early phase of generating ideas to a loose topic like we have at the board game, you're better off with brainwriting or crazy. If you have already something like a definite idea, a lot of constraints, then this might be more helpful.
Yeah, I think it's also a lot of personal choice.
Yeah, that's true.
So, for example, you got me with the Crazy 8, and if you ask me which one is the best.
Yeah, I mean,
independent of the setting.
Also, I really want to try brainwriting at some point, but it's a very formal method. So you have to find 5 other people. We will do a self-help group on that. Yeah. So the downside of the whole thing is that we have already overdone with time. So I have 3 more methods, but I'll just pitch them to you, Wilfried. So one thing which I find might be helpful is a method for idea refinement. It's called Scamper, and it's basically an acronym for checklist, substitute, combine, adapt, modify, eliminate, or reverse or rearrange. And it's a toolkit where you go through an idea and try to substitute parts of it, combine it with other ideas, modify parts of it, adapt parts of it, and eliminate parts of it, overthink if you need them, or even reverse them. And then you change the idea and see if it gets any better. And there's basically a checklist you can go through. So that's an idea. So I thought that it might be really helpful if somebody comes in and says, I don't know any games. I only know Monopoly. So we make a Monopoly about that. And then you do Scamper and change Monopoly.
Yeah, I think it does. It also fits to the other ideas that generate ideas in the first place. And then you have something to refine ideas.
Yeah, maybe in a second stage. Yes, that's good. Yes. Also, 2 more methods are mind mapping and starbursting, and both are visual structuring. So you'll find a lot of information on mind mapping online. Starbursting was also new to me when I did my survey in advance of the video podcast, but it's very much alike. So for mind mapping, you put visually in the center the idea you have with a few words, and then you make branches out of it, which are dimensions of thinking about the idea. Like, for instance, we would have the mobility and motivation game. And then we say modalities of mobility. We say different motivations. We say mechanics of the game, and so on. And then we can refine, like we put sub branches for the types like train, plane, e-bike, bike, scooter. For the mechanics, we can put in scarce resources, simulation, stability, network effects, or something like that. And then we can start to analyze the idea and spread out and then interconnect things. Mind mapping is cool for that, but it's not a collaborative thing. So this is something that is not used for communicating, while starbursting, on the other hand, is...
But I have used mind mapping, and we also have done it in teams. So
yeah,
basically, one person can add something, another person can add something.
You have to be on the same page with that.
Yes, of course. So one person, if they have a different understanding of categories, they would mess up your mind map.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. There needs to be a lot of unspoken communication and agreement. With starbursting, it's much easier. That's meant to be a multiplayer game. Starbursting is you put in the idea in the center, just like mind mapping, but instead of defining branches yourself, you have predefined branches, 6 key questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And that's how you analyze your basic idea. So if we put in the mobility and sustainability game, then we say who, it's about the person who plays it, for instance. We say what, and then we define what the game said. You can actually brainstorm. Instead of brainstorming for the idea, you can brainstorm on the who. I say it's about the player. You might say it's about legislative. I don't know. It's about the judge or something like that. So that might also be an idea to structure an idea visually. So one person at the flip chart and a group of people yelling out like about the how and the who and the why.
That's interesting. Never tried this one. Yes.
Yeah, it's also on my list of trying stuff. We'll be there at the board game jam, so we can try it there. Having fun with some people. Anyway, so that's basically from the tool side what I or we wanted to communicate, and conclusions or recommendations, how to find the right method for the right occasion. That's actually a problem. So I think a lot is personal preference. If you know a method, if you like a method, then why not use it?
I think it would be important that you have tried the methods, because if you know one method and you don't know the others, then you might have already a bias for the first method. Also, probably it's not the best one for you. So trying everything out, but probably not when you need them, but just for fun beforehand, that you have like an understanding that you have personal preference. And then, of course, I think personal preference basically is it. So if you have the feeling that this method works best for you, then just go for this method.
Yeah. And I mean, that's actually what I would add up to that anyway. If you only know one method, then you don't have a personal preference. So you should have more errors than one in your quiver. So try out a few methods. Mind mapping is also extremely helpful for other tasks. It can be done alone. So I assume that would be a good thing. Inversion methods, inverse brainstorming, and worst possible idea are also really easy to try out yourself. So then you already have 4 methods to choose from if you do Crazy 8, which we assume you do anyway, because it's so cool.
That one is definitely cool, yes.
Yeah. Also, of course, you have to think about what's possible. So if you have people who are mostly writing, then of course you can think of brain writing. If you have people working mostly visual, like graphic designers, then maybe it's a visual method you need, like starbursting or mind mapping. So that's the constraints also are there. And if you see that something doesn't work because of the team dynamics, you should definitely change method. Then it helps if the method is not so long, so that you can say, okay, we don't come to an end, stop it here, change to that. What actually really helps with team dynamics, so while we're speaking of that, is Lego. So I even did this in the lecture. Building a team, I let them build something with Lego, and they had to build it together. And actually that helped a lot with the team dynamics. So if there's time, give them something practical. That's actually pretty cool. I'm not sure if we should do that at the sustainability board game jam. I have, I think, 1,000 pieces of Lego here, so maybe we can try that.
Work out.
Yeah.
But even with Lego, there can be the problem that you have like the master builder and the person who has never played Lego. I don't know that. I know that sounds very unlikely, but still that can happen, that the persons don't feel that they can do this well, and others have the feeling that they can do that extremely well.
Yeah.
And this then leads to people who are building and bystanders.
Yeah.
It's probably less a problem with Lego because it's very commonly known and
Yeah.
almost everybody has played with it eventually. But this, I think, is a problem. Find something where everyone in the team has like an more or less equal level of using it.
That's a good point, but it might help to discover or uncover the roles, the hidden roles. Like when you say there is the master builder, this definitely has to be an alpha person or a beta person to take over the responsibility for building. If you have somebody who is more like into giving directives, helping others, like the philanthrope player type, then they would, if they are the master builder, help the others. So then you're fixing the roles and the expectations of the group members. And everybody can see them based on this simple exercise. So that might be the benefit. The downside would be that they have these roles, of course, and you cannot eliminate them. Absolutely. Okay. So there are other ideas like storyboarding or design thinking, or what is it called? The 5 Ws or something like that. So question asking techniques. Will not go into that. There's a whole bunch of lectures on innovation management. They do this stuff typically in product design. I think we're good with the few things we discussed. So it's a foundational overview. And anything to add or a pressing
May I ask,
question? Yes.
what would you recommend to learn about that methods? Just Googling them, finding them, the descriptions of those online, or do we have books about these techniques in our library?
I did not find any books, but I didn't search for books in the library. I have to say that. So what I found out is that if you know the name of the method, you'll find a lot of web pages describing them. So that's how I came across it. I did co-projects with innovation management, and they said, "Oh, let's do Crazy 8." And I said, "What's Crazy 8?" And that's how I learned about Crazy 8 and these ideation techniques and creative thinking. And then from there, you can handle yourself to the next idea. So that would be my approach. That's what I did basically. And then try out what actually works and what not. It's bad when I say that here as an engineer. For me, this is a soft skill. For innovation management, it's a huge competence, most likely, if you do that, if you can moderate that. For us, it's, I think, a soft skill. And so I wouldn't have any academic resources on that.
Yes, but I think we are past that point where soft skill means something negative. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. The more you have, the softer you are. No, the more competent you anyway. Yeah, that's actually a good point. So I'm thinking if I have any resources to share, I can actually share my slides because I have slides on Crazy 8, and I think there are some resources on the slides. I can put them in the show notes so that people are not stuck with just our text and our audio stream here. So maybe that's for a quick overview. And I think mind mapping is in there and the worst possible idea. So it doesn't cover everything. But yeah, anyway, you can find the others online.
Sounds interesting.
Okay. So if that's all from your side, Wilfried, then thank you very much for listening. For our listeners, if you want to give feedback on this episode, you can definitely use the platform you found us on, like YouTube or Spotify, or email us directly at gse@aau.at, which means GSE, Game Studies and Engineering, this wonderful master program we're working on with the master students at Klagenfurt University. The link is www.aau.at. Of course, we put everything in the show notes. So we hope you find our information valuable. Please try the methods, at least Crazy 8, it's really fun. And we hope you apply them to the sustainability course. Any final words of encouragement?
Looking forward to the crazy ideas. Not necessarily limited to Crazy 8, but perhaps made with this one or another one. I think that will be great and innovative.
Yeah. And I have to say, I also awaiting the creative ideas because they are always something I never would have thought about. So that's what I really appreciate. Okay, then thank you again, Wilfried. Thank you for listening, watching in, and yeah, hope to see you at the board game jam. Bye.
Bye.